I'm a college student, and obviously with all my money going towards school, pretty much any amount of extra cash helps. And because of this, mid-semester I decided to pick up a part-time job as a ramp agent at my local airport. Basically what this means is I'm the guy responsible for loading and unloading your airplane baggage. Now, every once in a while we have dead bodies transported in cargo bins, and this night was one of those occasions. On top of that, it was raining. Not just lightly raining, but pouring rain with decently close lightning. And of course, my manager assigned me to be throwing this plane. Basically, all throwing means is that I was the one that had to pull all the cargo out of the storage bin of the plane. I was already tired from school earlier that day, but it was the last plane for the night, and all things considered, there wasn't too much cargo to unload. My coworker Dave pulled the ramp to the plane and raised it up so I could walk up the conveyor belt to enter the storage bin. I climbed into the small and cramped space and made sure to sit as far away as I could from the white cardboard box carrying the dead body. I was the only one up there, and I tried to be quick, because honestly, I was just trying to go home and go to sleep. Although there wasn't really much I could do to speed things up. The conveyor belt we use moves insanely slow, so as to give the guys on the floor time to scan each individual package. I was setting down packages for maybe 5 minutes when I realized that lightning was not only becoming more frequent, but was also seemingly right on top of us. I had my earbuds in and was trying to just ignore it, but that's when I heard the loudest, honest crash that had ever filled my ears. It was lightning, but so close that I literally fell to the ground. Almost immediately, I instinctively looked up, and that's when I saw the most haunting sight I had ever seen. Down near the end of the storage bin of the plane in the darkness, I could see the lid to the cargo bin with the dead body fly off. It was now sitting upright. The body quite literally went from laying down to an upright position so forcefully that the lid had flown off. In a full-on panic at this point, I ran as fast as I could down the ramp, all the while my coworkers were screaming at me that the plane had just been hit by lightning. We went inside, and after I caught my breath, I explained to them what I had just witnessed in the storage bin of the plane. I will never forget how quickly the color on their faces disappeared, followed by looks of pure horror. After maybe 5 minutes of discussing the situation and hearing the fear in my voice, my manager ultimately decided it was best if I just went home. During the whole duration of my drive home, I was stuck in a state of shock. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know if what I saw was real or not, but shortly after I got home, at least part of what I saw was confirmed real, as one of my coworkers had texted me, and he explained how when he went back up into the storage bin, the lid to the cargo bin with the dead body was off, but that the dead body itself wasn't sitting up. I did some research on whether or not a lightning strike could give off enough energy to cause a dead body's muscles to tense up enough for it to physically sit up for a few seconds, but I couldn't find any results on this. So, to this day, I still have no idea whether what I saw could be explained by the lightning, a trick my mind was playing on me because of fatigue or something else altogether. But either way, I would quit my job at the airport the very next morning. I honestly couldn't see the money as being worth it anymore at that point. The trauma I had experienced was far more than the money was worth. About a year ago, I was taking a business trip for work. I was flying to New York and was told through my work that when my flight arrived, there would be a ride there to pick me up in front of the terminal. This was very nice and something I liked about when I traveled for work. I really didn't travel that often for it, maybe a couple of times per year, but when I did, they would always treat me really nice. I got to the airport early, and it was pretty busy. My flight got delayed as well, which always seemed to happen, but eventually we got in the air. For most of the 3-hour flight, I looked over work stuff and listened to music. I got a window seat as well, which was good for me, because I always liked to look out of it. By the time we landed, it was 10 p.m. I got off the plane and went over to get my checked bag. I had to wait a little longer for this, and by the time I finally got it, I was really tired and just wanted to get to the hotel. I was looking forward to it, because my job had paid for me to stay in a rather nice place as well. I got my bag and then went to the exit. Things weren't too busy by this time, and I went to the sidewalk and saw there were a few cars there, but not many. I saw a couple of taxis and another car that was nearby. As I looked around, I heard a small honk from the car in front of me. I then saw a driver wave his hand out the window, and I went over and asked him if he was my ride. He said yes, and then I got in the back seat with my bags. It was a newer-looking black van, and it had rather comfortable seats. We started driving, and I went on my phone, texting some friends for a while. When I looked up, I noticed that the driver of the van was staring at me through the mirror. It was kind of awkward, and I looked away, but he didn't. He was giving me some creepy looks as we drove, and I suddenly got a bad feeling. I then got a text message on my phone. I opened it up and read the message. The message said that my ride was at the airport waiting for me, a black SUV. I was not in an SUV, and this car did not look like a taxi either, just a regular van. I couldn't believe that I had been so stupid. I said to the man driving that I had accidentally gotten in the wrong car and he was not my ride. The man looked at me and said that yes, he was my ride. I told him no thanks and I would just like to get out. We looked as though we were still in a city area, and if I got out, I would be able to get a taxi or another ride. The man didn't stop, though. He didn't even answer me when I asked him to let me out. Instead, I saw that he was now driving faster and more crazy. We seemed to be leaving the city, and I asked the man several more times to please stop and let me out. I told him I would pay him for the ride, but he still wouldn't stop. I decided at that point that I would call the police. I dialed, and when I heard them answer on the other end, the man did as well. He pulled over the van right there and looked back at me. He then tried to grab my phone from me, and I went to open the door, but it was locked. The guy then unbuckled and moved into a better position to take my phone. I could hear the 911 operator talking on the other end of the phone, but I wasn't able to tell them what was going on. The man reached one more time, and this time he did get my phone away from me. He grabbed it and then went back to the front seat, rolled his window down, and threw my phone as far as he could. As he was doing so, I tried to roll down my window as well. To my surprise, it worked. I thought it would have been locked, but it rolled down, and when the window got all the way down, I wasted no time and crawled out of it onto the street. The man then opened his door, but I was already running towards another car in traffic. He then just got back inside his van and sped off. I ran to retrieve my phone and then called the police once more. I waited on the side of the road for them until they arrived a couple of minutes later. I was able to tell them everything and then got a taxi to my hotel. Unfortunately, all of my things were still in the guy's van, but luckily the next day he ended up being caught and I was able to get it all back. In high school, my best friend did amateur modeling, and she usually would connect with photographers through her Instagram. One day she was over at my house and showed me the profile of a photographer who had messaged her. It was a guy 10 years older than her, and when he messaged her, she assumed it was for modeling. He replied saying she could model for him, but that he'd much rather take her out on a date. My friend disclosed how old she was. She was 17 at the time. And he said that wasn't a big deal to him if it wasn't to her. When she told me this, red flags went off in my mind, but she pretty much just brushed them off, saying that age wasn't a huge factor for her either, and that her parents had a bit of an age gap as well. Fast forward, this guy says he had to go to Colorado for a photo shoot, and that he would love to meet up sometime when he got back in town. She talked to him for months, keeping me updated on how she really liked him. When I checked out his profile, it was filled with photography, but barely any pictures with his face included, which in hindsight was definitely a red flag. My friend wasn't going to change her mind on him though, and as her friend I share my opinions, but I also respect her decisions, as she's usually pretty level-headed and responsible. On a whim, I stopped by where she worked one night to see what she was doing later, and she mentions that this guy all of the sudden says he's flying back today, even though originally he wasn't flying back for a few more weeks. He starts claiming that he has nobody to pick him up from the airport because his flight gets in late and asks if my friend can. She's a bit unsure about it, but was really excited to meet this guy and decided that airports were safe and that she would go get him. I knew I wasn't going to sway her, and she had been talking to him for so long I felt a little more comfortable with the whole idea, but told her if she's going to go pick up this guy to at least let me go with her so that she's not alone. She agrees and texts him a heads up that she was bringing a friend. He did not like that idea, He told her that would be awkward and became very defensive. Then he said that his flight was taking off and abruptly stopped responding. Over the next few hours, we sat in her room checking that there was an actual flight leaving from Colorado scheduled and that everything he had told her added up on paper. That's when we got the idea. We planned to go sit in the airport with disguises on in the crowd and watch for him to walk out from his gate. If he looked creepy or odd, when he texted her to pick him up, she would just respond that she couldn't. And if he looked normal, then we would just go back to the car, take off our disguises, and walk back in. We get there very early to find the best hiding spot, and there's plenty of other people sitting around, so we wedge ourselves in the back. I even ask the help desk to make sure we're at the right place. We have the flight he is supposed to be on pulled up on our phones so that we can see when it lands, and we're just killing time talking back and forth. I'm not a very observant person, so I keep rambling on and don't notice that my friend is turned pale white. She whispers to me in a language only I would understand that the guy she has been talking to is sitting next to me. His flight was still 20 minutes away. There was only one seat between him and my friend, and I was sitting in it, and he knew. We casually got up and walked to the restroom. When I went back out, he was gone. His flight arrived, nobody even resembling him got off, and he never texted my friend again. For months I was terrified he was going to randomly show up. Guy who was trying to abduct my friend, I pray we never meet again.